Thanks for joining us today. My name is Deirdre. I'm Patient Support Officer with Migraine Ireland. I'm joined today by my colleague Naomi Thornton, who is our Information Line Support Officer. We're here today to talk to you about issues that affect women living with migraine as part of the build-up to International Women's Day. This talk will be available as a PDF should you require it at the end of the presentation. We hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to info@migraine.ie and we will try and answer anything that you have. We're not medics, so this is not a medical talk, so we cannot answer any medical questions, but we will be happy to answer anything that we can. So, Naomi, are you happy if we get on with it?
Absolutely, thanks, Dee.
Okay.
So migraine is the leading cause of disability in the world for women under 50, but is also prevalent in categories of women both over 50 and young women as well. So it's quite prevalent in all communities of women. But it is important to note that it is the leading cause of disability for women under 50 because it tends to hit women, unfortunately, when they're at the time of their life where they're busy, they're heavily relied on. They might have young families, they might have older families, they might have elderly parents, and they might be working full-time, part-time, just at the time of your life when you're kind of at your busiest and your peak is when migraine unfortunately can most often rear its ugly head. Women are diagnosed with migraine 3 times as often as men are. And an estimated 880,000 people live with migraine in Ireland. So going off the rough estimates there, we could say maybe around 600,000 Irish women, or women living in Ireland rather, could be living with migraine as well. And so some particular nuances of Ireland is that we are coming out of a time where there was historically a marriage ban on women in professional spaces, and that has had a knock-on effect in our society that has lasted to this day in many ways, in many shapes and forms. And one of them is that there's still a female to male neurologist ratio, for example, just to give one example, that's particularly important, that 30 to 70. And so why is that important? Because I suppose historically women haven't been as included in driving the conversations in medically as they could have been, for example, in terms of research, in terms of having representation. It's an important little statistic to just feature in terms of what the impact that might have had historically on ratio or on understanding how migraine can affect women and their lives. And thankfully that's going in the right direction now, and so we might also see the research and the understanding and the knowledge follow that direction as well. And so just a little quick run through of why it is believed one of the reasons why women might be more at risk of living with migraine, and is that it is attacks are closely linked to the levels of hormones. So one of the main hormones we talk about when we talk about migraine will be estrogen, although there are others involved as well. And essentially, in a nutshell, monthly cycles, your period, ovulation, when that starts, it can often be the time at puberty when migraines can also start. And throughout the life, then you might find that some women find that migraine can be very closely linked to their periods, and can, at the time of perimenopause, then you can it's often reported that women can find a spike, and sometimes really migraine can take a very frequent, it can become more frequent because maybe cycles and hormones are at a time when they're spiking and when they're fluctuating more. So then oftentimes, sometimes even women who have gone past perimenopause then into menopause itself might find that the migraines might settle, or they might find that other triggers can become more pronounced. And other things can happen as well. Like, for example, women can find that when they're pregnant, they might suddenly experience a leveling off of migraine attacks for that few months, or only to then find when they're in the throes of a new baby, then that the migraines come back, and with a whole load of extra triggers and things as well to contend with. So it's very up and down, and it's linked to estrogen, although the link isn't fully understood, and there may be other links as well and other reasons. And so some of the socio-economic impacts of migraine, in terms of looking at some of the barriers and the issues that women face in our Irish society on the whole, and how we're just kind of, I suppose, trying to hone in on how those issues can particularly affect women with migraine in their own kind of, in our migraine community, how those issues might affect women who are living with migraine. So we do know that women and girls face significant inequalities in Ireland still. And we've listed a few of them there: housing crisis, cost of living crisis, public services, in terms of it can be very difficult at the moment to get places in childcare. It can be very difficult at the moment to get an appointment with the GP. It can be very difficult waiting lists are long, and so there's a whole litany of issues facing people in all sorts of ways, facing all people and all families. And marginalized women include, but are not limited to, for just a couple of examples, disabled. And we do consider migraine to be a significant disability. It's considered to be one of the most disabling experiences that a person can have in an attack. And migrant women, members of the LGBTQ and traveling Roma women, these are just a few examples of women that would be considered marginalized. And so I suppose you can imagine the Venn diagram of living with migraine, living with belonging to a marginalized community, and facing these socioeconomic impacts as well, and how, it can kind of be a perfect storm for migraine. And that's, we would be just quite concerned about women's access, if you belong to one or more of these groups, to services, and or if you just anyone living with migraine and their access to services in the current context. So, and just the compounding aspect of that. Yep. I hope that makes sense. And so just some quick stats there, or some quick points rather. So it's just, there's women continue to have lower incomes, less wealth, and fewer resources, all while shouldering the greater share of unpaid care responsibilities. So unpaid care responsibilities include minding family members, children, elderly parents, relatives, any of that. These are also, like, living with in a socio-economic background, lower socioeconomic background, is another risk factor for living with migraine, and the stresses that come with juggling childcare, juggling work, trying to basically juggle it all, is another risk factor. And we know that women are overrepresented in lower paid and precarious work, and by precarious work we're talking about work that is temporary, work that hasn't got permanent contract, work that is not as stable and safe as in terms of permanent work. Women are overrepresented in lower paid work as well. And startingly, only 34% of people living with a disability are in employment at all. So we can see just how then, when you factor in cost of living, energy crisis issues, and transport issues, such as living in rural Ireland faces significant barriers as well that are completely different to the barriers and issues faced in urban areas. So it just is so many things, and so many factors can influence the condition of migraine and compound it. So how could we know that 6 out of 10 lower paid jobs are held by women, and the gender pay gap is at 10% overall, but in some sectors it's at 50% of the swing. So that would hugely impact lots of decisions on healthcare, on how often you can access healthcare, and your autonomy and your access to also things like taking sick leave, things like just being concerned about work and disclosing your illness at all of this is all tied up in the same. And so there's been a kind of traditional approach to supporting like a kind of social protection, but there is a belief that we need to see more activation and more support in including people who are marginalized, including women who live with migraine, and how to incorporate them into the labor market. And so we need to make workplaces more flexible. We need to make more workplaces more understanding, reduce stigma, and supportive in order for women to be more autonomous and to have more financial security. And so rather than just only looking at social protection, we also need to look at how we can incorporate and make our workplaces more inclusive for safety and of all. And so access to healthcare for women who are marginalised are at more risk of health problems stemming from health inequality and systemic issues. So we know that in Ireland, we have a huge gap between public and private, and the issues that people and the access. And so women who are marginalised are way more at risk of falling into the cracks in the system. Marginalised women, we went through that already, sorry. And then we need to essentially empower women and support them in being able to make informed decisions and to self-advocate for themselves, and to ensure that women are listened to when they do access healthcare. And women need the tools to advocate for themselves. They need education resources, they need access to reliable information, and they need to be able to convey the information of their experience and be able to communicate their experiences and have those experiences and those concerns believed and listened to. And we really need to see continued investment and research into the health of women and girls and the issues that affect them.
So one of the things that affects people with migraine, particularly with chronic pain diseases and with invisible disabilities, is dismissal. It's the stigma that we're talking about. So the stigma can lead to many people not disclosing, so they have to literally suffer in silence. Some statistics or some facts about migraine as well, which are unfortunate and which have kind of historically led to this stigma and the suffering in silence. So migraine as a condition, as a public health concern, only really got broad recognition in the year 2000, which is, I mean, it's known since ancient times that migraine existed. There are cures from ancient Egypt, listed, and ancient Greece listed for migraine. So it's not a new thing. It's been around for a while. Historically, it has been stigmatized and dismissed purely as women's hysteria. Even the great Sigmund Freud himself, who, by all accounts, lived with migraine himself, dismissed it as women's hysteria. And men have traditionally faced traditional gender roles and gender barriers. Men are, well, they're the stronger. They're seen as the stronger. They're kind of, they're the ones that have all the power. They're the stronger. They don't get sick. They're fine. They can do anything. Going to a doctor to talk to the doctor about what's largely regarded as just a headache can be seen, especially in kind of the male area of things, as being kind of like a bit wimpy. So, we don't generally, men tend not to go to a doctor for things like that. So what kind of stigma is there? I mean, a lot of people experience stigma. There are several different stigmas, more or less the same, but there are several places of, or several ways it shows up. So there's the public stigma, there's the attitudes in the general public, the misperceptions of migraine as we said, as just a headache, and that everyone gets headaches, so just take a pill and you'll be fine. The media as well doesn't do us any favors. I was recently watching a soap where somebody was complaining about migraine when they were just, somebody was giving out to them, and they just they said, oh no, stop, I'm getting a migraine. Things like that. Like, you've characters talking about it and dismissing it in soap operas, news reports, things like that. Don't take it seriously. It's just, even when they do talk about new treatments that are coming online, they tend to use language that wouldn't be ideal, such as to cure migraines, things like that, when we know migraine is not migraines, it's a condition and it cannot currently be cured. Then our social circles, all this kind of thing bleeds into our friends and families don't understand it. If they don't experience it, they don't understand the pain. You can't see the pain, so unfortunately that's one of the problems with it. They don't understand it unless they actually see you in crisis, or they see the consequences of living with migraine and other invisible disorders. Structurally, stigma bleeds in through organizations, the laws, the workplaces, government policy, and healthcare. It all comes back to this misperception of migraine. Organizations and laws are built around, are concentrating on getting people to work, not looking after so much the person's healthcare and why they may not be able to work. Particularly when it comes to things like social welfare and things like that, they don't necessarily take into account the effects. The effects are how it affects you and why you can't work, how disabling or debilitating it is, because they want you to work. So they're reluctant to kind of hand out kind of social welfare and things like that to people, because they don't understand it, and they think like, well, I get a headache, so if I can come in with after taking a pill and work, why can't you? Again, it brings into the whole thing, the misperception of migraine and what it is. Workplaces, again, it's dismissed. Workplaces, small little changes can help, but people are reluctant to disclose because of the stigma attached and because of the attitudes of possibly co-workers and employers. So an employer can't do anything if they don't know what they need to do. But at the same time, if you do disclose and then you're dismissed or regarded as, lazy or whatever, it's heartbreaking. Government policy as well doesn't help with regards to laws about work days, working times, sick leave policies, things like that. A little bit of kind of adaptability is what's needed. And the same in healthcare. Healthcare needs healthcare professionals, and that need a little bit more education on specific things, specifically on invisible uh, illnesses and disabilities, and also need to believe patients when they hear them say how much this actually affects them, rather than dismissing it and saying, oh, you're only, you're stressed, or you're this, that, and the other. So the structure is there. It's all not on purpose, but it's all against the person who is trying to cope and to live with an invisible illness like migraine. And then self-stigma. So it affects you psychologically as well. You start to believe some people start to believe things about themselves, that they are lazy, or that it's just them, or they're just moaning all the time, or, it's that it's all in their heads. Are they really that bad? How can they be that bad with a headache? Again, it's going back to even people with it, who live with it, can still regard it as I've got a headache. How can I still be so bad? You know, so those assumptions, those beliefs in themselves, and also it's very bad for your self-esteem when you constantly have to, when people have to give up going out with their friends, they become more isolated. They're afraid to go out or make arrangements because they don't know if another attack is going to happen or if their symptoms are going to get worse. And then they've got the attitudes of friends and people who don't understand, being told, don't have a migraine while you're out with us. It's not, like you can't control it and things like that. So it's very, very bad for self esteem, and it causes distress and more ill health as a result. So this is from a survey that was conducted by Chronic Pain Ireland on the stigma of chronic pain and why people with chronic pain experience more loneliness. And you can see the quote there. It says that 42% of people with chronic pain in Ireland feel that their pain is doubted by others. So straight away, you're starting from a point of having to prove your actual illness. Whereas people who have other illnesses that have visible symptoms or that are quite serious illnesses or even possibly fatal illnesses um, don't have to prove that they have it. All they have to do is say, I've got whatever illness it is, and people will accept it. And they will be sympathetic and horrified, and they will try to do anything, for you. But if you tell them that you have migraine or chronic pain that they can't see, they're kind of, I mean, you'd be fine. Just rest, relax. That's so having to prove your own condition, what you live with every day, adds to the stigma. So the stigma or lack of understanding from friends and family and society in general. As a result, you can of misunderstanding, job losses, career opportunities reduced, and opportunities to socialize, the unpredictability of pain and fatigue, not knowing what's going to happen from day to day, and trying to balance everything with this thing hanging over you. It's kind of like a sword of Damocles. Will it fall or will it not? And as a result of a lot of these, there's financial issues, there's a lack of transport for some people with certain diseases and disorders, cannot drive, so they would have to use public transport. And again, there's there's a lack of kind of awareness of these disorders among these areas. And this all feeds into low mood and mental health issues. And that's basically all goes back to bringing in to the stigma and stigmatizing yourself as well as others stigmatizing the disease. The World Health Organization stated recently that a lack of social connection is linked to a 30% higher risk of stroke and heart disease. So, like these little hearts and brains, it's important to be social as much as possible. It's easier said than done, but it is important to try and find even a few good friends who they may not understand it, but will accept what's being said, and have some sort of social interaction with people. Um, it's also worth looking for, if people can look for organizations like ourselves and other organizations, patient organizations that will help to connect people with services and with others that are in similar situations, to know that you're not alone, and that can really help to reduce this risk. So this is just another video from, this is just another thing from Chronic Pain Ireland. They were generous enough to share this with us. This is for chronic pain for in general, but it is so relevant to migraine that we just had to show it. So I will just stay quiet for a second while this is showing. Yeah, so that stat at the end, 89% of people avoiding talking about it, tells you all you need to know about the attitude that there is about chronic pain, unfortunately. But one of the things that we try to do is try to change that, but it is an uphill battle. So we have evidence of stigma because some people might say, oh, look, it's really not that bad, but it actually is. And here's some of the evidence. So we did our own survey there not so long ago. We did it specifically for employment. And these are just some of the statistics that we've taken out of it and some of the information. So the experience of disclosing, first and foremost, that you have migraine has resulted in people feeling certain things or experiencing certain things. And these are just some of the words that they mentioned. So they were discriminated against. Their perception or lack of perception or misperception of migraine affected them. They were regarded as lazy. And one person actually retired rather than disclose their migraine. That's huge. Being so afraid of how you would be perceived that you decided to retire early than actually disclose that you have a chronic illness. You would never get that in um, certain other illnesses if you told them. They would leave your job open for you until you got better or something like that. You would get all the support that you need. But to have to, or to feel that you had to retire rather than be able to disclose your chronic condition is horrible. It really is. And you know, this person also was a woman. So again, that feeds into it. Then the negative experiences included bullying, the migraine, the disease being used against the person, written warnings because they take so much sick leave, and people having to use sick leave and some holiday time, and being scrutinized or sent to HR or occupational health because the managers don't understand and kind of, can it really be that bad? I mean, come on, it's a headache, which it isn't. And then, so almost 75%, like three quarters of respondents said their employer doesn't have any policy in place for chronic conditions at all, not just migraine. So the workplace is not set up for anyone who has a chronic condition of any kind. And 70% say that migraine has a direct impact on their career. And that's everything from career change, lost opportunities for promotions because of bad sick leave, and attendances. A lot of people go part-time willingly or job share willingly because they are not given the proper, it's either that or you leave the company or you stop working. Some people are able to work for a good amount of time. They just might need a little bit of extra flexibility here and there. The other thing with regards to, so certain types of jobs would be necessary, or certain aspects of certain jobs might be also barriers. So, for example, if you work for a travel company and you might have to travel a lot, so air travel and that kind of thing, and the stress of travel and that kind of thing can be huge triggers for people with migraine. So they may not be options that are open to you. So trying to find flexibility that you can still work for the same company, but not necessarily do that particular aspect of the job. Flexibility is what's needed, but this is evidence of the stigma. So the European Federation of Neurological Conditions, or Neurological Associations, or EFNA, also recently did a survey. You can read the survey report by the link on the bottom. Shows similar to ourselves. It kind of shows that 84% of people are indicating they experience stigma as a direct result of their condition. And you can see that interaction with medical professionals, employment, and with the public. There's the three areas where people experience most of the stigma. The fact that medical professionals, we know people, women in particular, are not believed by a lot of medical professionals, not all of them, because it's often dismissed and we're often told it's stress or it's, it's this, that, or the other, or it's hormones. Go home and relax a bit or drink more water or something like that. Even medical professionals tell you things like that. And it's called gaslighting. And unfortunately, it's the experience of a lot of people, particularly women, though. And also there's a lack of education, which we mentioned earlier, with some health professionals, that it's through no fault of their own. They can look these things, they can study these things or get an interest in these things afterwards, but their basic education deals very little with these kind of things. 35% of people made feel that it's their fault that they have a neurological condition. So guilt comes into it hugely. With regards to migraine, there is that whole, was it my fault? One of the first things you do if you get an attack is ask, what did I eat? What did I drink? Did I sleep enough? Did I do this? Did I do that? So basically it's your fault that you did it. So that's something, even that basic is where that's starting from. And then so that it's their fault that they have a neurological condition also suggests that you're not doing enough to help yourself, things like that. So that brings out that. And then the invisible physical issues that come out, the top three are fatigue, pain, and sleep issues. And they're a vicious circle as well, because with pain, it's very hard to sleep. If you can't sleep, then you get fatigue, and it's a vicious circle like that. It really is. And also sleep issues and things like that are triggers for pain. So, you can see how many, they're circles within circles within circles. So there. Health literacy in healthcare is important. 85% reporting medical professionals didn't believe the extent or the severity of their symptoms. So again, this is going back to, we're talking about the gaslighting and the, it's stress or it's hormones. You just need to relax. It can't be that bad. And 83% not receiving adequate treatment because they weren't taken seriously. I don't know, 83% even sounds a little bit low to me. Health literacy among patients is very important, because you need to be able to advocate for yourself, unfortunately, because there is that lack of awareness. You need to be your own ambassador for the disorder. And to know how to describe things to your doctor can be difficult, especially with migraine, because there's no visible aspects to it. So trying to describe exactly how it affects you and how your pain feels, or where it manifests, can lead to misdiagnosis, because there is no test for migraine specifically. So 67% of people are initially misdiagnosed, which is, amazing. And 71% of people with neurological conditions have had to adjust their role or work schedule. I mentioned that in the last slide, because of their condition, and only 35% report that their employer was accommodating of this change. So that kind of bears out the evidence that we had as well. And that's throughout Europe. So this was a European one, not just an Irish one. And then a researcher and PhD student in psychology in Galway he conducted research with Chronic Pain Ireland, and they've generously allowed us to share some of their information. There's a link to Josh's video at the top there, but it's his quote that I was interested in. Again, it bears out what we're saying. He's talked to thousands of people with chronic pain. All of them have had some sort of experience of somebody lacking understanding, having some kind of stigma of chronic pain, and reacting negatively to chronic pain in some way. That's, again, it bears out everything that we've been saying. So with all of that, where can you get help? I just looking at the quote again from the Chronic Pain Ireland survey, people have said that they've had to literally crawled to a family event to avoid being questioned about the validity of their pain and feeling further injustice. again, that's what we were saying earlier, being believed, having to prove you're starting from scratch, having to prove your chronic condition. There's very few other conditions where you literally have to prove you live with it or you suffer from symptoms of it. So these are some of the places that you can get help. Ourselves, Migraine Ireland, we provide information services and support services. We do events like this. We do events with medical experts as well from time to time. We try to look at several different aspects of living with migraine, because it doesn't just, as we've seen through this presentation, it doesn't just affect your physical health. It affects your mental health. It affects your family, your social health, your working life, your other physical health, not just your brain health. And it also comes into your financial aspect. Sometimes even you might need help legally and that kind of thing with regards to that, with regards to your illness. So we try to cover as many bases as possible. Um, all our socials and our website and that kind of thing will show, will have announcements of all of our events and anything else that we do. So please do contact us. And there's our email address, info@migraine.ie. Chronic Pain Ireland, who I've quoted a few times in this presentation, they have amazing services as well, and they would offer similar services to ourselves, but they deal with chronic pain conditions through a broad spectrum. So we are specifically for migraine and primary headache disorders, whereas Chronic Pain Ireland will deal with several different kinds of chronic pain disorders, but they're excellent. And the HSE have a Living Well program. I have a slide at the end of this that just gives you a little outline on the Living Well program, but basically it's for anyone who has a chronic disorder, who wants to learn how to self-manage it themselves. So MABS, Money Advice and Budgeting Service, they can help people who are impacted financially with regards to losing jobs or not being able to secure accommodation or anything like that, or just to help see where you're going from one month to the next with regards to money coming in and social welfare money and things like that. They can really help people. So their helpline is there and their website is there to have a look on it and see all the services that they have available. Citizens information is a vital source of information for everybody, I think. They have so much on their website. It's not even funny trying to, there's very little that they don't have information on. So you can look at all different services. They do they look at different social services. They even talk about, or they have references to legislation and that kind of might be relevant. So that's a really good website to do. And they have citizens information centres all over the country. So there's no one kind of central area, but they do have a phone service that's centralised. So you can call that from Monday to Friday from 9 to 8. And then community law and mediation. We've had them do talks for us from time to time. They're an excellent organisation. They can look into any kind of possible discrimination in the workplace or any kind of issues in the workplace. And also they can support you with regards to legislation and the laws that cover employment and employment equality and people with disabilities. And again, they're an excellent organisation. They're very accessible, and they do offer things like free legal clinics and things like that. So if you ever needed any kind of help or advice, and they're very discreet as well. So there's some of the places that you can get help. With regards to stigma, there is, again, this is through Chronic Pain Ireland, there is a programme called the ASPIDA program. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's basically against stigma, pain intervention development approach. So people can learn, people with chronic pain can learn techniques on how to respond to the stigma that they face, to cope with self stigmatization, their own thoughts and emotions, and how they feel about themselves with the chronic disorder. That's the link to the website, and you would have to email them for more information. But it's a great program. The idea that there is something there, that stigma of these disorders is recognized, and that there are people there who are trying to combat it. And so, the last but not least, this is the outline of the Living Well. Well, it's not an outline per se, but it is. They are quotes from people who've taken the course, so you can see that you know, people felt like they weren't alone, which is hugely important because of the isolation that Naomi spoke about, and all the other stuff that we both spoke about. It's very kind of easy to get trapped into your own head and into thinking that, oh my God, nobody else understands, I'm totally alone. But if you do something like this Living Well course, and a lot of other things, you find out just how many people, they're not in exactly the same position, but they may understand a lot of what you're going through because they're going through something similar themselves. So it's well worth looking through the HSE website at the Living Well program. And also ourselves, we do have, and Chronic Pain Ireland, we do have similar programs as well. So that's it. I hope you found this interesting. If not interesting, at least we have some facts. We have some things there for you. We also, you can ask for the PDF of the slides. We're happy to give them out. But I think that's it. If anybody has any questions, let me know. We're happy to answer them. So but if you don't, that's fine. That's no problem. If anything comes up afterwards that you can think of and say, oh God, I should have asked, then you can email us at info@migraine.ie. And actually, I'll go back to our, here we go, where I can get help. So that's there, our contact or our website and email there.